Hello, BookTube. I have a Friday Reads for you, a whole miscellany here, a little pile of books, starting with a Regency romance. I am a huge fan of these old Signet Regency romances, and I have hundreds of them thanks to previous used book shopping expeditions that are now a thing of the past. And I have fallen into the habit of reading one of these things aloud every day to my little schnauzer. and it's been great fun. And we're going to do that today. This is a Signet Regency romance, I think, from the 1980s. It's by Barbara Hazard, and it's called The Queen Bee. This is our next Signet Regency romance. At first, lovely young Miss Merrill Lancaster couldn't believe her suspicions. Surely she was imagining that Lady Gloriana Willoughby would want to sabotage Merrill's upcoming marriage to her son, the wildly handsome, utterly adorable Edward Willoughby, Viscount Trumbull. After all, why would Edward's widowed mother care if she lost her son to another woman? Not only was she blessed by wealth and title, she was also still a dazzling beauty, the toast of aristocratic society and the center of a swarm of noble suitors drawn to her like bees to honey. It was only slowly that Merrill learned the truth about this ruthlessly ravishing woman, to find there was no time to lose if Merrill were to keep her love from being torn from her by a foe who knew every treacherous trick and held all the cards. So, that is going to be the Regency romance for today and maybe a chunk of this weekend. Then this next one is a reread, a work of history. I was walking the bean and we came across one of those little free libraries. And I always look. Of course, I always look. I don't need any more books. But I always look. And I saw something in a paperback. I haven't read this thing in forever. This is Barbara Tuchman, the Zimmermann telegram, about an infamous German telegram that pretty much prodded the United States to join World War I. I read this eons ago and have not read it since. I've read and reread a lot of Tuchman's much bigger works, but not this. So I found it. I view it as fate. So I will reread it gladly. Then let's see here. What do we got here? Then let's do three that are new and forthcoming. And once again, I'm not 100% sure of the release dates on any of these things. Like for instance, this one is listed for early May, but I don't know if that'll stay true. We've seen all of these on this channel before. This is a reprint of Tomorrow Will Be Better by Betty Smith. And I haven't read this in eons. I've read Tree Grows in Brooklyn. I tried once abortively to teach A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. I seem to remember liking Betty Smith's other books better than A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, which is heresy now. But I'm so happy that this was reprinted, so I'll gladly give it another try. Then a summer book, a beach book. No idea what's going to become of beach books or the summer book trade. No idea. But this is listed also for May. This is the great Barbara Delinsky, an unbelievably prolific romance author. And this is A Week at the Shore, with the sand and the wooden fence and the ocean in the background. All it's missing is an Adirondack chair, a big tote bag, in order for this to be just scream beach read. And what have we got here? After 20 years, three sisters meet again in a place where their family was torn apart. It is a week at the shore they will never forget. There you have the seashells on the beach there. And I gladly read this. Barbara Delinsky doesn't always do it for me, but I'm a big fan of beach reads. So now more than ever, ironically. And then a big work of biography. This is, I think, June. No, this is listed for May. I don't know if this will still come out in May, but it's listed for May. This is going to be an Oxford University Press finished copy, if I ever get a finished copy. This is Engineering America, The Life and Times of John Roebling by Richard Haw. No cover to show you. Even the back just has a makeshift logo. Let's see here. A visionary and a man of immense creativity, John Roebling was one of the 19th century's most brilliant engineers and inventors whose work profoundly altered the physical landscape of America. In this book, the author tells the story of how Johann Roebling, raised in provincial Germany amid the war-torn chaos of the Napoleonic Wars, became John Roebling, a wealthy and world-renowned American engineer, best known as the designer of the Brooklyn Bridge. Roebling was also the engineer behind the world's first functioning railroad suspension bridge over Niagara Falls, and the first structure to link a northern state with a southern state after the Civil War. In 1867, Roebling received contracts to build one of the century's most stupendous and daring works of engineering, a giant suspension bridge to span the East River between New York and Brooklyn. But on the verge of commencing his dream project, He suffered a bizarre accident at a bridge site and succumbed to tetanus in 1869, several months before the construction of the bridge began. I think he stepped on a nail and couldn't be treated. But I don't know. I've only read one book about Roebling. This is a great big thing. This will be far more exhaustive than the last thing that I read. And it has all sorts of diagrams and illustrations all throughout. I imagine it'll have a lot more in the finished copy. But this I'm sure will teach me a lot. And it's a great big biography. It's my favorite kind of thing to read. And then lastly, for this Friday read, since my other videos have gone long, I'll keep this one short. The last one, these are not the only things I will read this weekend, but these are sort of a thumbnail sketch, a photograph to show you. And the last one is a graphic novel. I have been rereading my graphic novels, slowly but steadily rereading my graphic novels. And this is a great one. This was written by Dave Gibbons, who was the artist for Alan Moore's The Watchmen. He's a fairly good writer in his own right. And in this case, it's drawn by Steve Rude, the artist for Nexus, a comic book character that I've shown you a few times on on our various comic book days. And this is World's Finest. This is a graphic novel collecting a 4-issue miniseries teaming up Superman and Batman. And it was great. Just great. Superman and Batman are the heroes. Lex Luthor and the Joker are the villains. And the realization of both characters is very much along the lines of the 1940s and just wonderful. Just wonderful. It starts off with 2-page spreads, 2 of them, where first Steve Rude gives us Gotham City at dawn. And the sky is blood red. And there are gargoyles on the buildings, and the pigeons look like crows. There are spikes on old churches. And you see what I mean? There's beauty to the nature of the sunrise, but it's rising on a dirty city, on a dirty place. And then a page later, Steve Rude gives us sunrise in Metropolis to show us the difference. Here we have white doves, golden arches everywhere. The sun is glorious in the blue sky. Everything looks just clean and beautiful, no matter how high up you go. And there's the Daily Planet building. And that is Steve Rude just at the top of his game, showing us the difference between these two characters. That Batman lives in hell and Superman lives in heaven. And maybe the fact that the hell and heaven are a result of the two heroes. And then Steve Rude gives us another 2-page spread. I'm not going to take you through this whole thing. There's a really good story here, all about orphans. It's about an orphanage, and it's all about orphans, and it's a real good reminder that Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Lex Luthor, so many of these archetypal characters in DC Comics mythology are orphans. But of course, if you're going to do a miniseries about Superman and Batman, you have to replay their origin stories. You have to do that. And Steve Rude does a great job of it. He does a 2-page spread. But look what you've got here. You're running down the pages of each one. Bruce Wayne's parents are leading him out of the Mask of Zorro when they encounter an armed gunman. And look, see, this looks like that. It looks like the spaceship that young Kal-El's parents are sending him away from Krypton. There's a parallel here. And then we get this second page where the world explodes and the gun explodes. And there's grief and abandonment that can't find this little baby. And little Bruce Wayne is left completely orphaned. And what's the payoff? The nightmares still wake both of them up. Isn't that incredible? Isn't that just amazing? Oh. I've read this many, many times, but every time I do, I study Steve Rude's artwork because it's incredibly detailed. And eventually, in the course of the book, I won't give anything away, but in the course of the book, eventually Batman and Superman realize that they're going to need to think outside the box. They realize who they're dealing with. Bruce Wayne looks at explosions going off and says Luthor. And Clark Kent looks at a subtle psychological clue and says Joker. And that is just great, where they have to learn from each other, even when they're not around each other. That is just terrific. So those are my Friday reads. A bit of my Friday reads. I'll do more because all I do is read nowadays. I don't do anything else except walk the bean. And of course, as with most Friday reads, I want to know what you're doing. I want to know what you're working on, what you're reading, whether or not reading has returned to you or is starting to return to you. A lot of you were worried. that the one sure source of comfort and reassurance in your life was suddenly gone because of this pandemic. And I tried to assure you at the time that that is not the case. It is not gone forever. It's only gone because you're in shock, and you're allowed to be in shock. But when the shock starts to wear off, when you start to get accustomed to this new normal, reading will come back. It will come back. It has not abandoned you. The last thing you need to do, in addition to all the rest of the stress you're feeling, is to stress out that maybe you've lost this thing too. And I'd love to know if some of you have started to feel that. I know from private email, I leave my email in every video. Feel free to email me about anything at all. I know from the emails of quite a few of you that reading is starting to come back. I'd love to hear if that's true for more of you. So feel free to sing out in the comments field. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up for now. That's quite a few videos, but I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.